The stars of the galaxy were calm that night, but the silence did not last. A message spread across every world, every station, every channel. The Empire, proud and ancient, spoke with a voice that shook even the strongest hearts. From this day forward, Terran space is forbidden, the Emperor's envoy declared. No ship, no trader, no messenger, not even a whisper may enter or leave without our command. Aliens across the galaxy looked at one another with shock. What could have forced the Empire to mark human space as off-limits? Was it fear, or was it arrogance? Most believed it was arrogance, for the Empire had always seen itself as ruler of stars. To them, humanity was young, fragile, and unworthy of respect. On Earth, the news played on every screen, in the bustling cities, in quiet villages, in the faraway colonies. People paused to listen, but their reaction was not fear. Instead, a strange smile touched the faces of many, the kind of smile that comes from hidden knowledge. In the dark rooms of Terran Command, the admirals met in silence. They studied the decree, they listened to the Empire's threats, and then one of them whispered, "It begins." The Empire expected panic. They thought humanity would cry out, beg for mercy, and kneel as lesser species had done before, but humanity did not kneel. Instead, they stood taller. Even the children who heard the broadcast sensed something stirring, like a storm waiting beyond the horizon. The first test came quickly. An alien patrol ship dared to cross near Terran borders. They expected to find frightened freighters, weak scouts, unarmed stations. Instead, they found nothing. The patrol's instruments flickered, their sensors failed, and when the stars cleared, the Terran ships they had expected were gone, vanished. The aliens laughed, believing humans had hidden in fear, but the crew did not know their message would be their last. Far from their empire, in quiet corners of the galaxy, whispers began. Merchants told tales of Terran ships moving unseen. Pirates swore that human vessels had passed them by like shadows, and yet, no one could confirm what they saw. Every story ended the same way. With silence, the Empire dismissed these rumors as lies. "We are the law," their commanders said. "No human can defy us. No world can resist us." Their voices were strong, but their eyes carried doubt, for deep inside, even the most loyal believed the Empire had made a mistake. What none of them knew was that inside Terran space, the truth was hidden. Humanity had been preparing for this moment for years, quietly building, quietly waiting. And now, as the Empire declared them forbidden, the time of silence was almost over. A Terran scout ship broke formation one night. It drifted close to the Empire's lines, glowing faintly against the dark. The alien fleet spotted it at once and gave chase. For hours they pursued the tiny craft, mocking the humans. But then the scout ship stopped, and a single Terran voice echoed across the comms. "Do not enter our space again." The aliens laughed at the warning. They fired on the scout, but before their weapons struck, the ship disappeared. Not destroyed, not broken, but gone. Their scanners showed nothing, only silence remained. Back in the Empire's halls, the arrogance grew stronger. "They think they can scare us," said one general. "We will crush them the moment we decide." But those words could not erase the unease that spread through the room. The Emperor's decree had been meant to show power. Instead, it had begun a story that the Empire could not control. In the shadows of Terran space, humanity watched and waited. Every station, every colony, every ship carried the same quiet strength. They did not fear the Empire's command, they welcomed it, because now, when the Empire finally came, they would see what humanity had truly become. The galaxy listened, the stars themselves seemed to wait. And in the hearts of men and women, one thought echoed louder than all others. The Empire believed their arrogance could shape the future, but in truth, their arrogance had already cost them everything. The Empire expected silence after their decree. They expected fear to spread through Terran worlds. They expected human voices to go quiet. But what came instead were whispers, strange whispers that grew louder with each passing day. On the border stations of the Empire, traders spoke in hushed tones. "They say the Terrans are building something in secret," one merchant murmured. "They say their ships vanish into shadows, unseen," said another. At first these were dismissed as rumors, but soon the stories multiplied. Too many voices, too many sightings. The Empire could not ignore them. One night, in a lonely sector near the Forbidden Line, an alien patrol vanished. The fleet reported in, then went silent. When reinforcements arrived, they found only debris floating like broken bones in space. No enemy signatures, no trace of human weapons, only silence, heavy and endless. The officers stared at the wreckage, whispering the same question. What did this to them? Back in the capital, arrogance ruled the halls of the Empire. Our fleets are unmatched, the general said. No human could strike without leaving a trace. But inside their hearts, unease was growing, because even they could not explain what was happening. A captured alien courier spoke of something darker. He swore that when his ship was intercepted by Terrans, he heard a single word, one word spoken clearly before they vanished. Wait. That word spread across the galaxy, simple, short, but heavy with meaning. Why were the humans asking the galaxy to wait? What were they waiting for? In the heart of Terran command, the leader smiled quietly. The Empire thought humans were afraid, but the truth was different. Humanity had prepared for years, in silence, in shadows, in hidden stations far beyond the Empire's sight. They had built weapons no one had ever seen, ships designed not for defense, but for domination, engines that could vanish into the void itself. And now they were ready to reveal only pieces, small hints, enough to spread fear, but not enough to show their hand. The galaxy began to change. Neutral species that once bowed to the Empire now watched carefully. Some sent secret envoys to Terran borders. Others whispered that maybe the Empire had overreached. Maybe their arrogance had pushed them into a trap. In one daring act, a Terran vessel slipped past the Empire's blockade. It entered their territory without warning, without fear. Empire sensors locked onto it, but before they could fire, the ship disappeared into thin air. Moments later, the same ship appeared behind their flagship, and across every channel, a human voice spoke. Do not test us. The fleet panicked, scrambling to respond, but by the time they aimed their weapons, the Terran vessel was gone again. The flagship's captain reported the event to High Command. His voice shook as he spoke. They can move where they wish, he whispered. They can strike when they choose. The Empire tried to silence the story. They called it lies, fear-mongering, exaggeration. But soldiers talk, captains talk, and soon the truth spread faster than orders could contain it. Terran defiance had become more than rumor. It had become a ghost that haunted every alien ship near their borders. On Earth, the people remained calm. Children went to school. Families gathered in cities. Colonies thrived. But under the surface, every person carried the same secret pride. They knew what the Empire did not, that humanity was no longer weak, that the time of hiding was over. The whispers grew stronger still, some said. The humans had weapons that bent the stars. Others claimed they had allies in the void, ancient forces that even the Empire feared, but none knew the truth. Only the humans smiled, waiting. The arrogance of the Empire blinded them. They told themselves it was all illusion, that the Terrans could not possibly stand against their fleets, that no young species could rival their power. But arrogance is a weakness, and in that weakness the Empire was already breaking. The galaxy watched in silence, all waited for the first true blow to fall. And in the shadows of Terran space, commanders whispered to their crews, soon. The Empire grew restless. Their pride would not allow whispers to control the galaxy. They sent a strike force to test the Terran border. A fleet of warships, strong enough to burn entire colonies. Their commanders laughed, expecting to crush whatever humans dared resist. At first, everything seemed quiet. The Terran outposts they approached appeared abandoned. No ships, no signals, no defense. The Empire's fleet advanced with confidence. Their soldiers cheered as if victory was already written. But then, the silence became heavy, too heavy. Scanners flickered, engines stuttered, and comms filled with static. Adjust the frequencies, the commander ordered. Yet nothing changed. The stars themselves seemed to darken. A cold shadow stretched across the fleet, and then it began. One of the Empire's destroyers exploded without warning. No weapon signature, no incoming fire, just sudden destruction. The crews screamed through comms, but before their words could finish, another ship was torn apart, and another. The fleet that had arrived with pride was now in chaos. The commander shouted orders. Find the enemy, lock on, return fire. But their screens showed nothing. No Terran ships, no fighters, no trace of weapons, only shadows. It was as if the void itself had turned against them. Suddenly, shapes appeared. Not clearly, not fully, but glimpses. Human ships sliding through the darkness, appearing and vanishing. Like ghosts. Their hulls shimmered with strange light, their movements unnatural, unpredictable. By the time the Empire tried to target them, they were gone again. Panic spread quickly. Some ships fired blindly into the dark, others tried to flee, but every time a ship broke formation, it vanished in fire. The commander realized the truth. The humans were not running, they were hunting. On the Empire's capital world, the report arrived broken and fragmented. Attack. Unseen. Ships everywhere. Weapons unknown. Then silence. The council sat frozen, their arrogance shaken, but instead of humility, they shouted louder. "This is illusion," one cried. "Humans cannot strike us like this," another argued. Yet fear had already entered their hearts. Meanwhile, across neutral worlds, the stories grew. Traders swore they had seen Terran warships fade into mist. Pirates whispered that humans moved between stars without engines. Some even claimed Terrans had unlocked forbidden technology from the dawn of the galaxy. The truth remained hidden, but the fear was real. In the heart of Terran command, the leaders watched the battle unfold. They said nothing as the Empire's fleet collapsed. Only a quiet satisfaction filled the room. One admiral whispered to another, "Let them believe it is shadows. The longer they fear the dark, the stronger we become." On Earth, life continued as normal. Children played, cities glowed with light, colonies thrived, yet every person felt it in their bones. The Empire had struck first, and the Empire had lost. But this was only the beginning. The Empire sent scouts to search the battlefield. All they found was debris, twisted metal, broken hulls, shattered pieces of pride, no human bodies, no captured ships, nothing but silence. The silence mocked them louder than any words. The commander who survived told a chilling tale. They were everywhere, and nowhere. We saw shadows, and then we died. His voice shook as he spoke. No one in the Empire wanted to believe him. But his terror was real. The galaxy listened. For the first time, the Empire's fleets were not feared. For the first time, the name human carried weight. A shadow in the void that no one could face. The Terrans had revealed only a glimpse of their power, enough to haunt the Empire, enough to warn the galaxy, and deep within their space, humanity prepared for the day when shadows would no longer be enough. When the full fire of Terran strength would rise, the stars seemed to hold their breath. The void itself whispered of change, and across every world the same thought spread. The Empire had declared Terran space forbidden, but now it was the Empire that feared to enter. The Empire could not allow whispers and shadows to rule the galaxy. They could not allow their enemies to believe that Terrans were strong, so they made a decision. They would gather their largest fleet in history, and with fire and thunder, they would burn Terran space into ashes. Across the Empire, orders were sent. Warships from every corner of their dominion were called to one place. Massive carriers, armored dreadnoughts, swift destroyers, and endless swarms of fighters. The sky above their capital filled with ships until the stars were hidden. It was a sight meant to inspire pride, but also to crush doubt. Generals stood before their emperor, voices loud, faces proud. "We will end this lie," one declared. "We will show the galaxy that no human shadow can touch us." Arrogance filled the air like smoke. They believed numbers alone would secure victory. But numbers mean nothing in the dark. The fleet launched, stretching across the void like a wall of steel. Millions of soldiers filled the decks. Drums of war echoed through every channel. The galaxy watched in silence, for never before had the Empire moved such power against one single foe. Near Terran space, the fleet slowed, sensors scanned, weapons primed, but the stars looked calm. No ships, no stations, only quiet. For a moment the commanders laughed. "See," one said, "they hide like frightened children." But unease soon crept in, because the silence was too perfect. Suddenly, communication lines began to flicker. Ships lost contact with each other, signals scrambled, voices cut short. "What is happening?" captains demanded. No answer came. The vast fleet, so strong, so proud, began to feel alone. Then, without warning, a single ship appeared, a Terran warship, dark and massive. It drifted calmly before the Empire's entire armada. Its hull shimmered with strange light, its weapons silent, Yet its presence shook the Empire's hearts. The commanders roared with laughter. "One ship, only one," they cried. "They dare stand before us with this." But the soldiers on the lower decks did not laugh. Their hands shook, their eyes stared at the silent Terran vessel, because deep inside they felt the truth. This was no ordinary ship. The Empire ordered fire. Thousands of cannons lit the void. Missiles streaked across the darkness. The Terran warship was drowned in fire. The stars themselves burned with the storm. And when the smoke cleared, the Terran ship was still there, untouched. Not a scratch, not a mark. It simply drifted forward, as if the weapons had never been fired. A voice echoed across every Empire channel, calm, clear, unshaken. "You should not have come." Panic rippled through the fleet. Some tried to fire again, others tried to retreat, but systems failed. Engines froze, weapons shut down, as if invisible hands had reached into their ships and turned them off. The mighty armada was trapped, powerless. On the capital world, the Emperor watched in silence. His generals shouted, demanded explanations, but no answer came. They could only watch as their proud fleet trembled before a single Terran ship. Then the Terran vessel moved, not violent, only steady. Its weapons finally came to life. Beams of light cut through the void like blades, and in moments entire warships of the Empire were torn apart. Hundreds destroyed in the blink of an eye. The fleet that was meant to be unstoppable was breaking like glass. The soldiers screamed, the captains begged. But the Terran voice returned, calm as ever. "You were warned." The Empire had struck hard, but the harder they struck, the more fragile they became. Their greatest fleet, their proudest power, was now shattering in silence, and across the galaxy, every world watched. The whispers of Terran strength were no longer whispers, they had become truth. In that moment, the galaxy understood. The Empire's arrogance was not strength, it was weakness. And that weakness was now dragging them into ruin. The Empire's greatest fleet had gathered with pride. They had laughed at the sight of a single Terran warship. They had fired every weapon they had, and yet the Terran vessel still drifted before them, untouched, unbroken. The galaxy held its breath, waiting for what came next. Then, in silence, the Terran ship moved. Its engines burned with a strange blue light. Not fast, not loud, but steady, like a predator circling its prey. Empire captains shouted orders, but their voices shook. Weapons failed, shields flickered, and systems froze. The largest armada in history was trapped in its own arrogance. Suddenly, the Terran warship unleashed its power. A single beam of white light cut through the void. It struck an Empire dreadnought, the pride of their navy. In one heartbeat, the ship was gone. Not damaged, not burning. Gone, erased from existence. The silence that followed was louder than any scream. The Empire's soldiers stared in horror. They had never seen such power. A weapon that did not destroy but erased. One by one, Terran beams tore through their ships. Carriers, destroyers, cruisers, all vanishing in flashes of white. In minutes, hundreds of vessels were gone. The fleet that had once hidden the stars was now breaking. Apart, the Empire tried to retreat, but every attempt failed. Engines shut down as if seized by unseen hands. Navigation systems refused to answer. It was as if the void itself had betrayed them. Trapped, helpless, they could only watch as death came closer. On the command deck of the Terran ship, silence ruled. No shouting, no panic, only calm voices. They had waited for this moment. For years, humanity had built in secret. For years, they had been underestimated, mocked, and ignored. Now their power was revealed, not in arrogance, but in precision. A message was sent across every Empire channel. It was not a threat, not a speech, only simple words. You should have listened. The soldiers of the Empire broke. Some screamed, some begged, some prayed. Generals shouted in fury, but their words were drowned by fear. The pride of the Empire had been shattered. Their arrogance had brought them here, and now it was leading them to ruin. Reports flooded back to the capital. Ships erased, fleets broken, dreadnoughts gone. The Emperor sat in silence. For the first time, his face showed doubt. His generals trembled, their voices weak. They had promised victory. But now their greatest strength was nothing but dust. Across the galaxy, the news spread like fire. Worlds once loyal to the Empire whispered in secret. If Terrans could erase fleets, who could stand against them? Neutral species began to turn their eyes toward Earth, some with fear, some with hope. The balance of the galaxy was changing. On Earth, people watched the reports with quiet pride. Children pointed at the skies, dreaming of ships that could vanish and strike. Families cheered, knowing the Empire's shadow no longer hung over them. Humanity had waited long in silence. Now their silence was over. The Terran warship continued its assault. Not wild, not reckless, but controlled. Every strike was measured. Every blow was a message. The Empire had mocked humanity. They had forbidden Terran space, but in doing so they had awakened a force they could not stop. When the battle ended, silence returned to the stars. Of the Empire's greatest armada, only broken pieces remained. Debris floated like ashes in the void, their commanders gone, their soldiers scattered, and in the center of it all, the Terran warship drifted quietly. Calm, steady, undefeated, the galaxy knew then that the first blow had been struck, not just against a fleet, but against arrogance itself. The Empire was not invincible. Humanity had proven that with one ship, and the galaxy began to whisper new words. The Terrans have risen. But deep inside Terran command, the admirals knew this was not the end. It was only the beginning, for the Empire would not forget. They would come again, larger, louder, desperate to reclaim their pride. And when they did, humanity would be waiting, ready to show them the true cost of arrogance. The Empire had suffered its first true defeat. Their greatest fleet had been erased by a single Terran warship. The galaxy could not believe it. Whispers turned into shouts, and fear turned into truth. The Empire was no longer untouchable. Inside the Emperor's palace, chaos ruled. Generals argued, ministers screamed, some demanded revenge, others demanded retreat, but none could hide the fear in their eyes. Their arrogance had carried them into the fire, and now they were burning. Across the stars, worlds once loyal to the Empire began to question their place. Colonies that had obeyed for centuries whispered of rebellion. Merchants stopped paying tribute. Soldiers deserted. The great empire that had ruled through fear was now tasting fear itself. But still, the Emperor refused to admit weakness. He declared that the defeat was only chance. He ordered more fleets to gather, more soldiers to march. Yet no matter how many ships they built, the whispers of Terran power grew louder. Even the Empire's own citizens asked questions. If the Terrans could erase one fleet, what will they do to the next? Meanwhile, inside Terran space, humanity prepared. The time of hiding was over. From the shadows came fleets never before seen, vast carriers, silent cruisers, and warships larger than anything the Empire had imagined. They had been waiting, watching, building in silence, and now they moved forward. In the void, an Empire scout ship caught sight of them. The pilot gasped as he saw dozens, then hundreds of Terran warships rising from the shadows, engines glowing, weapons alive. He tried to send a warning, but his signal was cut. The last thing he heard was a Terran voice, calm and sharp. "Go back, tell them we are coming." The scout returned broken, his voice shaking as he spoke to his superiors. "They have fleets, endless fleets," he cried. "They are not weak, they were never weak." His words spread through the Empire like fire through dry grass. Fear turned into panic. On neutral worlds, leaders began to turn away from the Empire. They sent secret messages to Terran command, offering alliances, offering trade, offering loyalty. The galaxy had seen enough. The Empire's arrogance was now a curse, and humanity's rise was unstoppable. In one daring move, Terran fleets advanced beyond their borders. They surrounded Empire outposts, not with fire, but with silence. Stations powered down, garrisons surrendered without a fight. Everywhere the Terrans moved, fear followed, and the Empire realized the truth. They were no longer the hunters, they were the prey. In the council chamber, an old general whispered what none dared say aloud. "We cannot win." His words shook the room. The Emperor roared in fury, but deep in his heart he knew the arrogance that had built his throne was now breaking it apart. Back on Earth, humanity watched the reports with steady eyes. There was no celebration, no wild victory. Only calm, because they knew the war was not over. The Empire was wounded but not yet destroyed, and Terrans would not stop until arrogance itself was gone. The first great blow had broken the Empire's fleets, but the second would break their pride. For Terran warships were no longer ghosts in the void. They were rising suns, burning brighter with every step. The galaxy trembled, all waited for the final strike. The moment when the Empire would face not just shadows, but the full fire of humanity. The Empire stood on the edge of collapse, their fleets broken, their colonies in rebellion, their pride shattered, yet still they tried to hold on. Still they told themselves they were rulers of the stars. But the galaxy no longer believed their words. From every corner of Terran space, fleets began to rise, not one, not 10, but hundreds. Massive carriers gliding like mountains through the void, warships built in silence now burning with fire. Engines glowed across the darkness like a second constellation. The galaxy watched as humanity revealed its true strength. The Emperor gathered his final fleet, the last remnant of his once endless power. He told his soldiers they would strike one more time. He promised them victory, promised them revenge, but behind his words was fear, for he knew this was no longer a battle for territory, it was a battle for survival. The two forces met at the edge of a dying star. The Empire's fleet filled one side of the void, Terran warships filled the other. The silence was heavy. Every captain, every soldier knew that this moment would decide the future of the galaxy. Then, the first move came. The Empire fired, unleashing storms of missiles, beams, and fire. The star itself seemed to shiver, but the Terran fleet did not flinch. Shields shimmered, shadows bent, and the weapons fell useless into the void. The Empire's last hope was already fading. Terran ships answered, but their attack was not chaos, not rage. It was precise, measured, unstoppable. Beams of light carved through dreadnoughts. Wah! V's of energy tore carriers apart. One by one, the Empire's proudest ships fell silent, the void filled with burning debris. The Emperor's voice echoed across the comms. "You will never rule the stars," he roared. But the Terran reply was calm, steady. "We do not seek to rule. We only protect what is ours." And with those words, the final strike came. The Terran flagship unleashed its full power. A storm of white fire swept across the battlefield. The Empire's last fleet vanished into silence. The Emperor's flagship shattered, his throne broken. The Empire was no more. Across the galaxy, the news spread in moments. Worlds that had feared the Empire for centuries cheered. Colonies declared freedom. Enslaved systems rose in triumph, and all whispered the same name, humanity. But on Earth there was no arrogance. The people did not boast. The leaders did not shout. Instead, they spoke simply, "The stars are free." For Terrans had not fought to dominate, they had fought to survive, and in surviving they had become stronger than any empire. The galaxy now looked to humanity not with scorn, but with awe. Where once they were mocked as young and weak, now they were seen as guardians, guardians who had faced the greatest empire and brought it to its knees. In the silence that followed the war, a new order began. Terran ships patrolled not to conquer, but to keep peace. Worlds reached out, asking for alliance, not from fear, but from hope. And for the first time in centuries, the galaxy dreamed of balance. The arrogance of the Empire had ended in fire. Their pride had destroyed them. But from their ashes, humanity had risen, not as shadows, not as whispers, but as a force the stars could no longer deny. The story of Terran space was no longer forbidden. It was written across every world, every station, every heart, a story of patience, of defiance, of strength, and of one truth the galaxy would never forget. When the Empire declared Terran space off limits, they believed they were untouchable, but arrogance has a cost, and it cost them everything. And in that cost, humanity ascended from the silence of shadows to the guardians of stars.